Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really provocative idea. What if being a researcher isn't a career choice you make, but a calling? Something that's just a fundamental part of who you are, less of a job and way more of a way of life.
So where does this all start? Well, it begins with what seems like a totally logical question, one that anyone thinking about a life in science or academia might ask. Should I become a researcher? I mean, that seems like the most reasonable place to begin, right?
But according to the philosophy we're looking at today, the right response to that question is surprisingly blunt. The sources point to the famous composer Leonard Bernstein. You know, when aspiring musicians would come to him, asking for his blessing, his immediate answer was always the same, a flat-out no.
So why such a harsh answer? It almost sounds like gatekeeping. Well, this brings us to what our sources call the forbidden question.
Okay, this slide gets right to the heart of it. As one source puts it, if you have to ask for a roadmap, you're just not suited for the journey. I know, that's a pretty shocking thing to say, but it is the absolute key to this entire way of thinking.
Now, the point here isn't to be mean or to discourage people. Instead, you should think of the question itself as a kind of philosophical filter. The whole idea is that the real drive, the real answer, has to come from inside you, not from anyone else giving you permission.
All right, so if it's not a rational career choice, then what in the world is it? Well, this leads us to the core concept here, an innate calling.
And this quote from biologist Yasushi Hiroka just nails the idea. He looks back on his own life and says he never really made a career choice. It was more like he was just realizing an identity that was there along. He puts it perfectly. I didn't become a scientist, I think I was born one.
You see how this lines up exactly with Leonard Bernstein's view on artists, right? A life in research, just like a life in the arts, is for those people who honestly can't imagine being anything else. It's not just one option out of many. For them, it's the only one that feels real.
And let's be really clear about something. This isn't about being better or smarter than anybody else. It is not an external comparison game. It's about having this internal compass that points so strongly, so stubbornly in one direction that any other path just feels wrong.
Okay, so if becoming a researcher isn't a choice in the normal sense, then what decision is actually left for you to make? Let's see how this whole idea builds from here.
According to one of our sources, the advice from a professor was just this simple. The only real choice you have is to just acknowledge and commit to that powerful internal drive that's already there. It's basically a decision to be who you already are.
And that commitment has to be rock solid. Why? Because let's be real, the life of a researcher is incredibly demanding. The hours are long, the pressure is immense, and frankly, the pay is often pretty modest. The work itself has to be the reward, because without that deep, intrinsic passion, you could almost certainly find an easier, better life doing something else.
And this all boils down to the central theme of our entire explainer, the huge, fundamental difference between a job you do and a life you live.
So let's break this down with the two Japanese terms you see here. On one side, you've got shokugyo, a profession. That's a choice you make, often for practical reasons. It's a means to an end. But on the other side, you have ikikata, a way of life. That's not something you choose, it's something you are. It's an end in itself, and it's powered by that internal, undeniable drive.
Now, here's where things get really fascinating. This same philosophy pops up in a completely different place, somewhere you would never expect, far beyond the world of science and academia.
Check this out. A viral tweet tells the story of the American founder of Tower Records. You might remember them. The chain went bankrupt in the US years ago. Well, he visited Japan and was apparently moved to tears to find his stores were still thriving and that he was welcomed, like a hero.
So why did Tower Records survive there? The tweet suggests it's because in Japan, it was treated as something much more than just a for-profit business. It was valued as a vital piece of culture, a hub for music lovers that was worth protecting for its own sake.
And this brings us right back around full circle, connecting that record store in Japan to the research lab with a single, powerful phrase. For the people who kept it going and for the scientist who is driven purely by curiosity, it's not just a job, it's a way of life.
So after walking through this pretty demanding, but also kind of inspiring philosophy, what's the ultimate takeaway? What's the bottom line?
It all comes down to this one potent sentence. In Japanese, it's Kenkyusha wa shokugyo de wa nai, ikikata da. And what that means is a researcher is not a profession, it is a way of life.
And so, this powerful idea leaves us with a question. And it's not just for aspiring scientists, it's for every single one of us. Take a look at your own passions, your own drive. What is it in your life that's more than just a job? What is your way of life?